Professor Diaz here, and in this video I'm going to give you an introduction to the law of demand and the demand curve. Okay, so let me give you my definition of the law of demand. I like to make definitions simple, okay? Here's my definition of the law of demand. The more expensive the stuff, the less people want the stuff, okay? The more expensive the stuff, the less people want the stuff. Let me write that down. Law of demand equals the more expensive the stuff, the less people want the stuff. This is the law of demand. As prices go up, people don't want to buy as much, right? This is true for you and true for everybody in the entire world. If you think about the iPhone, right? The iPhones are pretty expensive, right? When I think it was the iPhone 10 was the first iPhone to hit $1,000. And as the prices of iPhones go up, less people want them, right? As the price of iPhones goes down, more people would buy them. A lot of people don't have iPhones because they're expensive. But if the price of an iPhone, say, was $500, more people would buy them. If the price of an iPhone was $100, probably almost everybody would buy them, right? So the more expensive the stuff, the less people want the stuff. The other way to say the same rule is the less expensive the stuff, the more people want the stuff, right? It's an inverse relationship. If stuff is expensive, not very many people want it. If stuff is cheap, inexpensive, a lot of people want it. This is true when you go out to eat too. Think about tacos, right? You go to your favorite taco stand. When you go to your favorite taco stand, your favorite taco truck, when the tacos are $2.50 each, you're only going to buy 1 or 2 or 3 tacos because they're pretty expensive, right? But if it's Taco Tuesday and they're $1 each, right? When the stuff is cheaper, you're going to buy more stuff, right? So the law of demand is the more expensive the stuff, the less people want the stuff. This is more or less universally true, although there are some weird exceptions, and we'll get into them later in the class, right? Sometimes there's psychological effects at play, right? As things become more expensive, they become more desirable, right? And maybe people buy them more. This is different. This is behavioral economics. It's a psychological thing. But in general, right, the general rule is that when things are more expensive, people buy less of it. When stuff is less expensive, people buy more, right? So we're going to get to our first graph here to graph the law of demand. And this is important, so pay attention. We've got a graph, and this is going to be a very common graph that we're going to use a lot. For this particular graph, what we're going to do is put price symbolized by the dollar sign, or sometimes I'll even put a P, right? You might see P, or you're going to see a dollar sign, but that means price on the y-axis, and you're going to see Q, or quantity, on the x-axis. So remember, the one going up and down is y, the one going back and forth is x, but we're going to call y price, and we're going to call x quantity. Okay, so how would we graph the law of demand? The more expensive the stuff, the less people want the stuff. So what we're saying is that when P is high, Q is going to be low. Okay, so we could put a point, maybe right here. When P is here, right, when price is here, quantity is low here. And when P, price, is low, say down here, we're going to put quantity high because people want to buy stuff when quantity or when price is low. And if you curve this out, it ends up looking something like this, right? And you could get any point along this curve because this whole curve symbolizes the law of demand. When you have a price up here, the quantity is down here. When you have a price down here, the quantity is way out here. So you can see a lot of times we'll draw lines that maybe look like this. So you can see where these things intersect the various axes, right? So in this case, we might call this price 1, and all I'm doing is putting a little 1 to notate that that's price 1, and we might call this price 2. So I put a little 2. So what happens when the price goes from P1 to P2? Okay, well, we would call this Q1 because it corresponds to P1, and we'd call this Q2, right, because it corresponds to P2. So as the price drops from P1 to P2, the quantity demanded increases from Q1 to Q2, okay? The quantity demanded increases from Q1 to Q2. This is from a price drop. So you can see the inverse relationship, right? And if the price was to go the other way, if the price increases, the quantity demanded would drop. Okay, this is the basic foundation for supply and demand, particularly demand. It's the law of demand, and this is how we graph the law of demand. We're going to talk a lot more about these concepts later in this chapter, and I'll give many examples, so don't worry, keep watching.